What's your biggest retirement question? Whatever it is, you'll find answers here. It's time for Ease into Retirement.
It's time once again to ease into retirement with Tom Mosley, founder at Mosley Wealth Management, as we talk investing, finance, and retirement with Tom. And if you need to have those conversations with his team of all-star advisors, get yourself onto the calendar for that complimentary written retirement blueprint at 855-526-1600. That's 855-526-1600 to sit down with them in Anaheim or Arcadia, Encino, Ontario, San Diego, and of course over Zoom. So just take some action for yourself and get started today at 855-526-1600. Tom, my friend, great show lined up this week. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so busy, it's almost like I get to relax and do a radio show, if you understand what I'm saying. So that's a lot of people get uptight about a radio show. I feel like I work so well with you, Mark, and I enjoy doing these shows with you particularly so much that I look forward to it every single week. And really, it's a break to be in here. Nobody's going to come bother me. The phone's not going to ring. Well, I'm not going to answer the phone at least in the next hour. And we're just going to talk to people about financial planning.
Exactly, and I'll dust my shoulders off there, give myself a little kudos for enjoying doing the show with you. And I'm glad that we've gotten a good relationship going here so quickly. And you and I were just talking about a lot of travel to different places in the country and out of the country right before we jumped on the air here. So let's have a little fun talking about the friendly skies of retirement planning. Since you do quite a bit of this, my wife does as well. What can air travel maybe teach us about retirement strategies? And so we'll have some fun with that. First things, Tom, you got to have a flight plan. You're not just hopefully willy-nilly, not jumping in a plane and just going randomly wherever. they have a flight plan.
If I'm going to get on a plane, like tomorrow at Orange County, I'm hopping on a plane and headed to Charlotte, North Carolina. I want that pilot to have filed a flight plan. And,
exactly.
We're considering needing an ARC this weekend here in Southern California, with potential rain or predicted rain or rain that you might already have,
Right.
And depending on that weather, if you're going to fly across the United States, you might have to change your plan a little bit.
Sure.
And you might have to go a little bit farther north or a little bit south. There was one time I was headed from Philadelphia to Dallas, and we actually went over El Paso and came back around a group of thunderstorms and came into Dallas, which is like 500 miles west of Dallas. So it's amazing, the flight plan. But you got to have one planned. You got to have one on the paper in order to be able to alter it. And
so they can navigate. Yeah, exactly.
And you don't want them up there in the air saying, where do you think we should go today? I don't know. I like flying over, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Let's fly up there and look at that for a while. We call that flight plan, when it comes to financial planning for retirement, we call it a retirement blueprint. And that's laying out where your income's going to come from. What are you going to do when we have rampant inflation again, like we had 4 years ago, like we had during the Jimmy Carter days? Don't think that in the next 20 to 30 years, we won't run into another year where we have to battle inflation. What are you going to do, third, with your investments? Number 4, what are you going to do with your taxes? That's an aspect of your flight plan / retirement blueprint. What are you going to do with your health care? Because that's going to be probably the biggest cost you're going to have after 65 years of age. And then finally, what are you going to do with your legacy? How are you going to leave it once you're gone? How are you going to leave it the right way so that it doesn't get taxed? Now, when you put that together, income, inflation, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy into a written plan, you've got a flight plan. You've got a retirement flight plan that's going to address everything from income to legacy, and you're going to be able to follow it. Most of you right now, instead of a retirement house that you can live in, you've got a lumber yard. I mean, you've got the elements there. You just haven't pulled them together into a plan. One of my clients is a vice president of a large lumber company here in Southern California. They're all over Southern California. And I went over to have lunch with him. He works about 2 miles from my office. I went over to have lunch with him about 7 or 8 years ago. And Ron said, "Hey, you want to go see the yard?" Well, he's not talking about like my backyard that they've been working on now for 9 months to get ready, and to redo the pool and all that stuff. He's talking about his lumber yard. And I went back out. What are you going to say? Yes, I want to go see your, because he's proud of it. That's what he's the VP of, the lumber and having the right equipment there and the right material there so that what gets sold gets processed out. So I went outside, and Mark, there were 2x4s, 2x6s up under the shed. There were doors, there was sheetrock, there was plywood, there were nails, there was, the little glue that they put things together with and all kind of stuff. And up against the building, there were roof trusses. Now, if you saw all of that stuff laying on an empty lot on your street, what would you think they were going to do? You would think they were going to build a house.
Exactly.
But nobody sits there and says, oh, what a beautiful house, as long as it's in the lumber yard. You have to take that lumber and take the right pieces and put them together with a blueprint, and then you have that beautiful house. Let's bring it into retirement. Let's bring it into the flight plan. You've got that general flight plan out there. You've got all the details, but you've got to have it written down as to what you're going to do in those areas. That's your blueprint. And then when inflation hits, you can react. But you can react from a previously designed strategy. That's what's really cool. You're not winging it. You're not just getting up and, hey, let's get up in the air and see where we want to go today. Nobody's going to do that. You have to have the flight plan. And that's the blueprint that we provide to anybody who calls in on this show and says, hey, I want to come in and meet with one of your retirement planning advisors. All of them are fiduciaries. There's 10 of us, okay? And all of us will sit down with you and we will build a retirement blueprint just for you, for wherever you want to go in retirement. Your flight plan is different than anybody else's. So that's what we offer on this show.
Well, and again, you can call 855-526-1600 to get started with that conversation and consultation. All right, Tom, you fly a lot. I don't much anymore. Are you good with turbulence? Do you grab a hold of the thing, the handles a little bit, or what? Last time I was flying, I was like, it's a little choppy up here. It's making me a little bit nervous, right? So people react differently to turbulence. Yeah,
they do. I mean, I was just on a plane going to Cabo about 2 weeks ago with my wife, and I'm sitting there, and even though I have a queasy stomach when I go out on a boat, like I love deep sea fishing, but I can't do it anymore because I get sick all the time, okay? Because turbulence on a boat really bothers me. But I fly enough, Mark, in answer to your direct question, that turbulence doesn't bother me. But I'll tell you what, the guy in front of me, they brought him the little white bags that are in the seat, and then they finally brought him a trash bag. You know what I mean? A complete trash bag.
Oh, no.
Because this boy was having trouble with the turbulence. And what was crazy was it looked like a clear day, but there was turbulence on that in the air, and that plane was bouncing all over the place. Now, obviously, when we talk about turbulence with a financial plan, we're talking about the ups and downs and the sideways of the market. And I've been doing this. Back in June, I passed my 30th year marker, okay? And there's some people that can just sit there during all the turbulence in the market and it doesn't bother them at all. I mean, they sit back and they say, the market's down. It's a great time to buy. And then there are other people that the least little downturn in the market, and they're calling you. And they usually call me on Friday if the market's down on Friday. And I generally say, look, let's wait till Monday or Tuesday. The market will be back up. And what happens anymore is the market bounces back up. Well, I'm okay with that because I've done this for 30 years. I'm okay with flying turbulence because I fly all the time. But those people that are out there and you're sitting out there and you're in retirement and you think, well, if this is another 50% downturn, I don't have the time to build this back. So that turbulence really bothers you. I got to ask you a question, Mark. Have you ever seen a black swan?
No.
Okay. I've seen a gray one.
Yes.
But I've never seen a black one. Okay.
Correct.
Now, in our business, they actually refer to those big, bad market downturns. We're talking about 1994. We're talking about 2000 to 2002. We're talking about 2008.
87, yeah.
Yeah, in 87, where things go down 30% in one day in 87 and 50% overall. Now, that's a black swan. That's what you can't control. You never go to the park and say, let's go see if we can find a black swan or a gray swan even. You normally see a white swan. Well, what they talk about in our industry is that turbulence that's really bad. Okay, that I was in a plane one time that dropped 2,000 feet in a matter of about 10 seconds.
Yikes.
I mean, that was scary. Okay,
Indeed.
because there were things that were on the floor that were up on the ceiling, if you understand what I mean. Okay,
That's crazy.
What were you going to say?
So that's crazy. Yeah, that's indeed scary.
Listen, there were people crying and screaming and everything else. So it does get scary in retirement. Here's what you got to do. You've got to have, number one, experience. And number two, if you haven't had experience, you need somebody who's sitting there with you who can reach over and pat you on the arm and say, it's okay, we're going to be okay because I've been through these kind of things before. And that's exactly what happened to me during that 2,000-foot drop, okay?
Yeah.
And that's where your financial advisor comes in. That turbulence, if you can't stand it, you need somebody who's going to keep you from doing something abrupt. Because what happens when the market goes down 1,000 points and you decide to call in and cash out of all your money on Friday afternoon and you feel real comfortable over the weekend? Except Monday and Tuesday it goes up 1,500 points and you've lost all of that gain. You need an advisor sometimes just to keep you and protect you from yourself during turbulence, to pat you on the arm and say, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You need to be invested to your risk score. You need to know that there's going to be risk in whatever you invest in, but you need to know what tolerance you have for turbulence. I can take a little bit of turbulence, but not a lot of turbulence is maybe what you say. Or you may be saying, I don't care. I've made money with turbulence. I've made money with ups and downs. That's where I want to be. You need to know where you are, and then you can stand the turbulence.
I don't know what the context of the video was I saw the other day, Tom, but I saw this video with a pilot who came out of the flight deck and got on the mic instead of just talking from up there to assure the passengers that they were going to be okay or something like that. But he basically said, I've promised my little girl that I'm getting her ice cream when I get home, and there's two things that I don't do. I don't break my promise to her when it comes to, getting her ice cream, right? And it got people to calm down and giggle and all that good kind of stuff. And so you need the help of qualified professionals, flying the plane and even air traffic control. We've got a lot of conversation going on in the country right now about that stuff. But, you do need people up there to help navigate.
Yeah, they see what's before you, or they can predict what's before you. And they're not always great because sometimes they lead you into the storm. Okay, they do lead you into the storm. But that air traffic control is sitting in a secure tower somewhere. And we hope they are this weekend, you know what I'm saying? And they're sitting in that secure tower and they're saying, go 300 miles south and avoid this storm, or go around this storm, or get higher and you'll get out of the turbulence. That's where the advisor comes in. I spent 7.5 years in Odessa, Texas. That's where the country music singer Larry Gatlin's from, and actually know him. He used to go to the church where I served as a youth pastor there. And he's got a song, All the Gold in California. And there's a line in it that it don't matter at all where you've played it before. California is a brand new game. And I will tell you this. It don't matter at all what kind of turbulence you've been through before in your money aspects. When you get to retirement, it's a brand new game. And that's where you really need somebody. It's not just investing anymore. It's not just adding to your 401k. It's watching that money to make sure you don't run out of money before you run out of life. That's the biggest fear people have who are 65, 55 years of age, actually, and older in most surveys. It doesn't matter what you've been through before in the growth stage, because when you're growing money and the market's down, you're buying cheap. But when you're spending money out of your retirement and the market goes down, you're spending more dollars, but spending more units of that thing in order to pay for everything you've got. That's where you need that air traffic controller / financial advisor to help you negotiate those things. I've been doing this 30 years. I coach all of my guys every Monday, all Monday morning, on every plan that we're working with anyone. We can write one for you. We can put together a blueprint for you, and then you decide if you want to work with us or not. But we'll do it for absolutely free. But all you got to do is call in and get on our schedule, one of our 5 offices all over Southern California. Get on one of our advisors' schedule. We will bill that for you. We'll help you navigate the turbulence of retirement but you've got to call us.
And that number is 855-526-1600, 855-526-1600 to get started today with the team of All-Star Advisors at Mosley Wealth Management. 855-526-1600. There's more to come right after this.
What does retirement look like to you? Travel, more time with family, volunteering, or giving back? Whatever your vision, you need a plan to get there. At Mosley Wealth Management, it's not about cookie-cutter advice. It's about knowing you and building a strategy you can trust. That's why we offer every listener a complimentary retirement blueprint. It's a step-by-step guide to help you understand your income options, uncover tax savings, and prepare for life's what-ifs. You've worked too hard to leave retirement to chance. Call now for your personalized retirement blueprint at 855-526-1600. That's 855-526-1600. Don't put it off. Your retirement is too important. 855-526-1600.
Back here for more of Ease Into Retirement with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management, serving you here in Southern California with his 30-plus years of experience in the financial sector and his team of all-star advisors, providing you with that complimentary written retirement blueprint at 855-526-1600, 855-526-1600 to get yourself onto the calendar to talk about, whatever's going on in your life that you need to address from that, financial standpoint. And Tom, maybe one of those pieces is the estate planning conversation. Often, and it's kind of the last piece of the puzzle for many people. Some don't care about leaving a legacy at all, and others do. So let's talk about some common estate planning mistakes you've seen through your career.
Estate planning, if you wanted to list all 6 of the steps of a retirement blueprint, is number 6. It's the last one you deal with because it's the last one you're going to deal with in your life. And actually, you deal with it after you're done. But you need to have your plans in order before you go. Maybe. You said, why do you say maybe? Because I know a lot of people who come in and they're all concerned. And by the way, we are set up now so that we've associated with an attorney here in the state, and we are able to work side by side with you to put your trust in place, to put your powers of attorney in place, to put your wills in place. We are able to do it all in-house. You just need to be a client of ours and work through the processes the way we're doing it right now. We are not opening it up to the public. If you come in, we build a retirement blueprint, you decide to work with us, we'll put together as part of that, we'll work with you. There's a little fees that you have to pay for it, but it's very, very low compared to what else is out there. But we will put together all of those estate planning documents for you and work together to do that. We're able to do it. It's a big step of achievement for us as a group, Mark, to be able to do that. But the reason I say you may need an estate plan is I see some people who come in and, I need an estate plan. I need to make sure I've got a trust. I've got a will. And you say, do you own a house? No. Do you have an IRA? No. What do you have in your checking account? $2,000. Well, you don't need a plan to leave something. You need a plan to live something, okay? Because you need to make sure there's money there that you need an estate plan. And this is personal with me because my grandparents, in the 1960s, they went out and spent at that time over $4,500 to put together an estate plan because at that point, my grandfather owned a farm of 444 acres, a business in town, and a service station business in town, and auto repair. And I mean, he was probably pretty wealthy at that time.
Sure.
But they lived and they lived and they lived and they moved to town, sold the farm. And my grandfather made a couple of bad investments, not with me. I was in high school at the time he did that. And they lived and lived and lived. And finally, to make a long story short, when my grandmother died, the last one to survive of the 2 of them, she left $38 to be divided between 5 kids.
Oh, okay? No. Wow.
And there they had gone and they had spent, $4,500 on putting together an estate plan 30 years earlier. And that estate plan was still there. And it cost us more as a family to get the lawyer to read it and to have the public trust reading. It cost us more to do that than it did that there was money in the account. So you need to plan on what you're going to use in your life. What are you going to have? You're still going to have to buy cars. You're still going to, you say, my house is paid for. Well, great, but you're still going to have home repairs. You're still going to have potentially long-term care. And that area of healthcare is still going to be there. So the number one thing I would say is before you get all hepped up on putting together that estate plan, you need to make sure you have a plan to live and how are you going to live out your life. Then you put together the plan to leave. I think that's the very most important thing. It's actually a pre-step, Mark, but I think it's really important that you be working with a financial advisor who can give you some direction on that. You may not need an estate plan if you don't have a lot of things that could go through a trust or a will, and if you have a lot of expenses that are still coming down the pipe that you're going to have to spend on the rest of your life.
Well, let's start with some low-hanging fruit for folks, right? We're talking about common estate planning mistakes here, Tom. So probably the lowest hanging fruit is just failing to update beneficiary designations, right? I mean, this is stuff you can do pretty darn easily, with whatever documents you have. And we're not talking about just the will or the trust. People often forget they've got, BDs on lots of different accounts.
Yeah, you really do. And let me tell you something. That's been to the Supreme Court multiple times. So many times they won't even listen to new cases because people have had a beneficiary designation and then they've gotten remarried, gone through a divorce, gotten remarried, failed to change their beneficiary document on what? Well, your insurance policies, your 401ks at work, your IRAs, your annuities, your pensions. Your pension has a residual there that's going to go to somebody. And most of the time I see it's either when they go through a divorce or they sort of fall out with, they get estranged from a son or a daughter or something like that, and they just go to sleep on it. Great story. About 15 years ago, this couple sitting in my office and worked at Edison at the time, very much retired by this point. And they came in, they'd been married 28 years. The guy had been working at Edison for 32 years. And I asked the guy, I said, by the way, who's Barbara? And she looked at him like looks could kill. And she said, that's his first wife. Why? Is he talking about her? And I said, no, Barbara's the beneficiary of the 401k you have with Edison. And she looked at him. She was so mad. I finally told her, I said, don't kill him tonight because if you do, Barbara gets all the money, okay? Because there was $800,000 in that 401k. And this guy had just forgotten to change the beneficiary in his 401k 28 years plus ago when he got divorced from Barbara, and he had never put his new wife or his kids or whoever he wanted to put down. But you got to check the beneficiary document. Once you're gone, you can't change them. They're set in stone. The number one thing before you ever think about a trust or a will or who you're going to leave it for, who are you leaving your stuff to right now that's got those beneficiary documents? Again, life insurance policies, 401ks, IRAs, annuities, pensions, Roth IRAs, those kind of things.
Well, so if we're talking about that, Tom, let's also talk about the fact that money makes people funny, right? I mean, it's just at the end of the day, it just does. And failing to take steps to avoid conflict or, potential litigation amongst family members can be quite important to, someone if they're leaving something behind. They don't want their kids to fight and totally understand that. But we've seen it time and time again. What are some thoughts and ideas here to maybe hopefully avoid some of that?
First of all, I've been in this 30 plus years and I just learned something I'm going to use over and over again.
Money makes people funny.
Money makes people funny. I've never heard that.
Oh, okay. Well,
but
there you go.
That is such a great deal because it does. That sweet little family of brothers and sisters and mom and dad are gone, and that blanket that laid on the living room couch, for all those years. Well, mom promised it to me. No, mom
Right.
promised it to me. No, my daughter was going to get that. The granddaughter was going to get that. And it's not even sometimes, Mark, the money or the assets. That's a big thing because, I recently had a year-long conversation with one of my good clients for long term. This person's been with me for probably 10 years, but the mom passed away and there was a condo in Vail and the brother wanted to keep it and my client wanted to sell it and the brother couldn't buy my client out of his half of it. So there's all kinds of things that that can be solved by you. Because if you do put together a good trust or a good will, that's communication from the grave. You are telling, you don't have to tell them beforehand, but you are telling them how you want your stuff divided. And if you don't, you may run into that situation in the Bible where Solomon, told the story of the two women fighting over the baby. It may be good with one of your children eventually that they split the baby in half and give half the baby to one and half to the other. And the real mom spoke up and said, no, give the whole baby to them because I don't want to kill my baby. Then you find out who's really to the core. So money makes people funny, my new saying, okay, from this show. But it does. It makes people funny and it makes people fight and it splits families. And a personal illustration on that I won't go into, but my brother and I had a falling out 11 years ago when my dad passed away, and my brother did some things that were totally wrong, and he's always been fearful that I would sue him over it because he knows he did wrong. Money makes people funny.
Absolutely. And if you need help, we're talking about estate planning here on the program. Reach out to Tom and his team of All-Star Advisors at 855-526-1600. Tom, because a common one we hear often in the industry is, well, maybe I should transfer some things over to the kids while I'm still around, right, to the family instead of at death. And, I get wanting to maybe see them enjoy some things, but we're not talking about gifting money or things of that nature, specifically like real estate. We often hear, well, maybe I should transfer the house to the kids while still going. Talk about some pros and cons here, or are there any pros, or is it just all cons? What's the deal?
It's a real landmine. It's like walking through a field of landmines, and what do they call them? Improvised devices, explosive devices, and IEDs, Because there's a lot of people do that to try to not have any assets so they can get into a nursing home.
Sure.
Well, there's a look back period. And here's another thing. A lot of people in Southern California bought that house when it was $200,000, and it's worth $1.3 million right now. There is a lot of capital gains tax if you sell your house in your lifetime. Okay. Yeah, you get a $250,000 deduction. If you're married, it could be $500,000, but there's still a lot of capital gains. Whereas if your kids wait to sell the house after you pass away, there's a step up in basis, and they many times avoid even a penny of taxes on it because they sell it right after you pass away. If you're close to passing away, you're still able to make decisions. Don't be real smart and go sell the house. You may be creating a capital gains issue for you. Got to look at them all individually. Got to think through it all individually. I'm not giving blanket advice here, but you may be creating a big tax bill for yourself and not even know it. So be careful about trying to take shortcuts, okay? Mama always said, if it sounds too good to be true, you know what the rest of that saying is, right, Mark?
Yeah, for sure.
Probably is, okay?
Yeah,
so be really careful.
Well, and you talk about lawsuits, there's other things too, right? It's not even just like the medical side of things too. I mean, now you've made this their asset. What if they got a divorce or got in an accident or,
Exactly.
You got all those other pieces. So you got to consider all these different parts of this, Tom, and we'll do one more quick one here. Not that it's quick because it's certainly a big piece, but not considering the tax implications of your estate.
Yeah, well, that ties into this last one, but there's also taxable implications. You've got that brokerage account or you've got that coin collection and you leave that to one child, but you leave a big IRA to the other and you balance that amount. Well, that's not fair because that coin collection, that brokerage account is going to be taxed probably in most cases in a lesser way. And those things that you leave people are taxed in almost nothing. Whereas that IRA is going to come out as regular income to the person who inherits it. So you've got to consider what kind of tax implications are going to go along with that gift. I mean, a gift is a gift. Don't get me wrong. And some people say, well, it's a gift. I don't care what they have to pay in taxes. Well, if I can save my kids money the way I pass it along and be smart about doing it, then I want to do it that way. So you've got to consider what kind of poison pill, in other words, from a tax standpoint, you might be leaving your kid. You want some input on that? All of our advisors are trained by Ed Slott, who's known as America's authority on IRAs, 401ks, and retirement taxation. That doesn't mean we're as smart as Ed Slott, but we have access. I'm a master elite advisor with him. I have access to call his people and to make sure, and we do about every 2 weeks or so, we make a call because we want to make sure that you're paying as little in required tax as you're legally required to pay. You want to work with somebody like that? That's us. Give us a call. We'll get you on our schedule. We'll build a retirement blueprint for you. And the number 4 thing in there is taxes to make sure you're not paying more than you should.
855-526-1600 to get yourself onto the calendar with Tom's team of all-star advisors all around the Southern California area. But you got to make that call first, folks, and get started today and talk about whatever you need to address in your retirement strategy or the lack thereof, right? So 855-526-1600 to get started. 855-526-1600. This is Ease into Retirement, and there's more to come after this. Back here for the third quarter of Ease into Retirement with Tom Mosley, founder at Mosley Wealth Management, serving you here in Southern California with his 30-plus years of experience in the financial services world. He and his team of all-stars are here to help, and you can get yourself onto the calendar for that written retirement blueprint at 855-526-1600. That's 855-526-1600, or you can visit them online at mosleywealthmanagement.com. That's mosleywealthmanagement.com, where you can check out all the tools, tips, and resources, and click on the seminars tab for upcoming events. If you like to follow that up, if you're driving along right now, just go to the website mosleywealthmanagement.com when you get a chance and click on that seminars tab and get yourself set for one of those dates. You can call the number, you can RSVP online, but just let them know you're coming. They'll be happy to have you attend. So 855-526-1600 or mosleywealthmanagement.com. And Tom, maybe one of the things you talk about in different classes, depending on what the topic is, but often there's a lot of Social Security conversations and myths that pop up. People say, well, I heard this or I read that. So let's talk about a couple of those here on this segment. The myth being, and I'm going to let you kind of be Mythbuster, okay? So you can tell us if these are true or if they're just busted. There's a perfect time to start collecting Social Security. Is that factual?
No, it's not factual whatsoever. What I'm talking about is there's not a perfect age. And by the way, if any of these myths throw you offline and you think, well, wow, I thought I knew that. 82% of the people, when they're surveyed and asked, do you have a thorough understanding of Social Security? They say yes. And then when people are given a test, it comes out that 38%, they make a 38 on the test because they really do miss things because there's so many little crazy rules. So if somebody's telling you there's a perfect time to take Social Security, they're not telling you the truth, because if you're hearing my voice right now, there is a specific time that's optimal for you to take your Social Security, but you may be in a room with other people, or you may be driving down the road and there's somebody passing you in another car over there. They may be the same age you are, but there's a different time when it's best for them to take their Social Security. And this is the warning I would have, Mark, for everybody out there. Be careful for Bob at the water cooler and Sally in the break room, because they've investigated it and they've figured it all out and they know the very best time for them, but it's not the very best time for you, because your perfect time is simply for you. Let me give you one story here. One lady came to me one time. She was 64 years old, and she put her stuff on the desk when she came in. This was about 15 years ago now, maybe 12 years ago. And she said, she started weeping. She had tears in her eyes. And I said, "Are you okay, Gladys?" And she said, "No." She said, "I did my budget last night and I'm $400 a month short." And I said, okay, "No problem. That's why you're here. We're going to build a plan." And so I started going through her documents, and I got over there to her Social Security document, and she was 64. And I said, "Gladys, it says here you're supposed to get $1,400 a month at your age. How long have you been taking Social Security?" And she said, "Oh, I'm not." I said, "What?" She said, "No, I'm not taking mine yet, because I went to a maximization workshop for Social Security. And the guy talked a little bit about social, said, don't take it until you're 70, and then tried to sell me some investments." She said, "But I've just always thought I needed to wait till I was 70 because that was the perfect time." This lady was $400 a month short. I went through everything she's got, and she's $400 a month short. I wanted to ask her, are you going to eat grass, or you going to eat dirt, or what are you going to live off of? I will never forget.
She had that 1,400 waiting though, right?
It was in a hopper ready to dump on her every single month.
Yeah.
What was my answer to her? It was go down and take Social Security.
Let's turn it on. Yeah, exactly.
Because now, what if she had an IRA sitting over here with $600,000 in it? Well, maybe we could have waited on the Social Security. We had options. We could have waited, but she had no other options. She had to go take Social. I told her, I said, Gladys, you need to go down. Perfect for you is going down and taking Social. And I'll never forget when she walked out the door of the front office, when I walked her to the door, she turned around and she said, I haven't seen my grandkids in Minnesota in 3 years because I haven't had the money to go up there, and my daughter works all the time. She said, in 2 or 3 months, I'll have enough extra money to go see my grandkids. All right? So you need to understand your situation is different. There's no magical time, 70, 62, 65, 66, 67. There's no magical time. That's why you need to work with a professional who's going to not only give you some advice from experience, but we're going to run programs as far as the Social Security optimization for you with all of the assets that you have, and what are your options so that you can optimize your Social Security. That's what we offer, but you've got to come in and get it.
855-526-1600, talking about some Social Security myths here, Tom. Social Security will run out of money, so grab it all while you can before it's all gone, right?
That's what everybody says.
Right.
Do you think Social Security will go broke?
Well, it's fear-mongering, so.
It is.
Yeah.
And they've never said it's going to go broke. They have said by 2033, they may only be able to pay out 77% of the benefit. And it's funny what they say on those reports, unless Congress acts. Okay?
Right, which they'll do, what's it, 2033, 2034? They'll do like 1 month before it's before it's
Maybe.
an issue. Yeah.
Or 43 days after.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
recently they've done. But that's not the question you should be asking, because you can't control one thing about whether they're going to diminish what they're paying for Social Security. Here's the question you need to ask yourself, all right? It's a myth that it's going to go broke completely. You need to ask yourself, if they do reduce my benefits by 23%, what's my plan? How am I going to deal with it? If I'm going to be short that much in Social Security, how do I build into my Social Security future plan, my income future plan, my retirement blueprint, so I'm not going to run out of money? That's where the financial planner comes in to help you, saying, okay, what if they don't, but what if they do? You've got a plan either way. You don't need to be left and say, well, I don't know, I should have done something 8 years ago when it was 2025 and I was listening to the radio show. Do something now to put in a what if they do reduce benefits, and then you're prepared.
This one always cracks me up, Tom. We'll do one more here and then we'll jump out and take a break. But decisions about Social Security typically have nothing to do with other financial considerations. I don't know how this got started and rolling. Maybe a long time ago it was different, but it just doesn't seem to hold any water. It should be considered as part of your overall and holistic strategy, because you're talking big money here.
Well, let's go back to Gladys.
Okay.
Number one, she had no other options. All right. She had to go turn on Social Security. Again, as I said, if she was sitting there with $600,000 in an IRA or a 401k or a brokerage account or some other source of income, maybe she could have gotten that extra $400, maybe even money to go to Minnesota to see her grandkids from that pot of money, and put that in the right kind of place according to her risk level, so it would make her some money, and then she could hold off on Social Security. So it does have something to do with other things. What about if you're married? If you're married, you need to be really careful, because if you both got Social Security, when one of you passes away, the larger Social Security stays. So maybe you want to consider turning on the smaller Social Security first and see if you can get by with that and build a plan to get by with that, and let that larger Social Security continue to grow at 8% plus the cost of living raise every year. Last year, it would have grown at 10.7%. This year, if you hadn't turned it on, it would grow at 10.8% with the cost of living raise. We can show you how that works out. And that breadwinner then, when you finally do turn it on, is much higher, and that's the one that stays if you're married. How's your health? I had a guy came in one time, wanted to know if he should turn on his Social Security, and he had terminal cancer. I mean, the answer is pretty much yes. Are you still working and you're under full retirement age? You can only make $23,400. Are you still working and you're paying tax? You may pay so much tax on social, it might not be worth it right now, whereas waiting until retire. Oh my goodness, Mark, I've just rattled off about 5 or 6 things right there that make a difference in the decision that Social Security is not a standalone asset. It is an asset, but it fits into the other plan. That's why you need a plan. You need an overall retirement blueprint to see how Social Security, which is one part of the first element of 6 that are in a financial plan, you need to get it straight. You need to get it right.
You ever played Trivial Pursuit? It's like those 6 little pie wedges that you got to get in order to win the game, right? So you got 6 little retirement wedges there.
And you got to have them all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They all fit together.
Exactly. Well, as we talked earlier, you can get onto the calendar, come in for a consultation and a review at 855-526-1600 with Tom's team of all-star advisors and amazing support staff. Or you can go online at 𝗧𝗟�wealthmanagement.com and check out the tools, tips, and resources there, as well as schedules, to come out to one of the upcoming events on the seminars tab. Lots of stuff happening. So again, 𝗧𝗟�wealthmanagement.com or 855-526-1600. This is Ease into Retirement, and there's more to come right after this. Back here for more Ease into Retirement with Tom Mosley, founder at Mosley Wealth Management, serving you here in Southern California. We're going to take some email questions from folks all around the area. Maybe these questions are something similar to what's bothering you and you just haven't asked those yet, or you kind of sparks your interest and says, yeah, I need to get this handled and taken care of as well. Well, give Tom and his team of all-star advisors a call at 855-526-1600 and get yourself on the calendar for that complimentary written retirement blueprint. 855-526-1600. No cost, no obligation, no reason not to pick up the phone and reach out to them right now. 855-526-1600. They got an office in Anaheim, Arcadia, Encino, Ontario, San Diego, and of course you can do the Zoom thing as well if you'd like. So either way, just take some action for yourself at 855-526-1600 or visit them online at @MosleyWealthManagement.com. All right, Tom, let's take some email questions. You and I were singing the name of this city here a second ago. It's kind of funny, actually.
Instead of Desperada, it's 𝗏𝗏.
That's right. Instead of Desperada, it's 𝗏𝗏. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Kenneth, if you're listening this week, here's your question out there in 𝗏𝗏. And he says, I have to start thinking about my required minimum distributions this year, Tom, and I have 3 different IRAs. Should I take money from each account, or can you take it all from one?
Hey, happy 73-year-old. You were born in the greatest year in the history of mankind.
Oh, no.
The same year I was born in 19, no, 18, no, 1952.
A while ago.
1952,
There you
okay?
go.
And a great question and a confusing question and a question that many people get messed up, Kenneth. Here's what I'm talking about. You look at your IRAs and your 401ks and your 403bs and all of those retirement accounts that are qualified accounts. That means you haven't paid tax on those yet, and those are the ones that the required minimum distribution has to come out of, okay? And a lot of people just lump all of those together in their mind, and they think, I've got to start taking money out of those. Now, if you've got the 3 IRAs, and I'm just going to answer your question first, and then I'm going to jump over to the 401ks, because a lot of people still have their 401k. But from those 3 IRAs, you can aggregate the amounts. Here's what I mean. Each one of them has created a required minimum distribution on their own that needs to be taken. But that required minimum distribution doesn't have to be taken from that particular IRA. Here's what I mean. You can take the amount that's supposed to come from each of the 3 of them, add them together, and then take that total amount down at the bottom that you get out of one of the IRAs. You say, which one would I take it out? of. I would take it out of the IRA that's performing, unless you've got it there for another purpose. Maybe it's an income IRA that you're drawing your income out of. Whichever one was performing the poorest, I would take that distribution out of that IRA and leave the other two that are performing better the chance to grow. You can aggregate, you can add them together, take them all out of one. Now let's move over to the fours, the 401k, the 457, the 403bs. You cannot do that. I have seen a lot of stuff, and I had one guy came in one time who had 6 401ks. I always joked around that, even with this guy, I said, well, you were hireable, but you just couldn't hold a job, because he had 6 401ks. Now, if he goes into required minimum distribution age, which is 73 and older right now, you've got to take one from every one of those 4 plans, those 401ks, 403bs, 457s. So it's a very big distinction that a lot of people mess up. This is one of those gotchas that the IRS, the federal government has that, if you don't do it the right way, we're okay with that penalty. And they get the penalty, all right? So it's like, okay, we'll be glad to fine you, and we'll be glad to if you do it the wrong way. So this is where the guidance of a financial advisor and somebody who's been through this before can help you. IRAs, you can add them together. 401ks, 403bs, nope, something's got to come out of each one of them.
Our final question this week is from Frank in Upland, and he says, I've heard people talk about annuities as a safe place for your money, Tom. What exactly makes them so safe? Aren't you still just relying on that company to come through for you? How is that any different than buying stock in a company?
Well, let's talk about the buying stock. When you buy in stock, you've got an investment. You're going to get a sheet that you're going to sign that says, I understand that I could lose the money that I'm putting in this stock, because stock can go up and down. You want to go back to the 80s and buy Sears that was in the S&P 500, or it was in the Dow Jones, and in the 80s it was one of the top 30 that was out there, and all the things that were so great in the 80s. You look at them, some of those companies are out of business now. You want to go back into the turn of the century, and you want to invest in Enron, which was the hottest company around, that's not even around anymore, and you want to do those kind of things. That's what happens with stock. An annuity, this is really important that you get this, because when you're 40 years old, 50 years old, a lot of brokers and a lot of financial people will come in and try to sell you a variable annuity. Now, there's a word out there, I hate annuities. I don't like variable annuities, because a variable annuity is an investment company, is an investment product that's inside an insurance product. So you're double paying. You're paying for the insurance product and you're paying for the investment product. What I do like for retirees is fixed indexed income annuities. Now, a fixed indexed income annuity has a guaranteed floor. You're never going to go down. You say, who guarantees that? The insurance company. That is one of the most solid financial institutions in the world, okay? They're going to back up that annuity where it's never going to go backwards. It's going to guarantee you, now listen to this statement, it's going to guarantee you potentially, if you buy the income type of annuity, it's going to guarantee you income for the rest of your life for as long as you live, even after you run out of your money. Your stock's not going to do that. If you've got an IRA and you spend it down to zero and you go knock on the door of the big box firm and say, hey, I ran out of money, I need some more money, I've got it in a brokerage account or an investment account, they're going to call the police. They're going to say, we got a crazy guy out here because he's down to zero still wanting money. But with a fixed indexed income annuity, it's going to pay you for as long as you live. And that's what, unlike when you're 40 and 50 for income, you need a job. But when you're in retirement, you've got to turn that lumber yard that you've built over the years of a financial pile, you've got to turn that into a lifetime income that's never going to run out. And that's where a lot of people are seeing the value of a fixed indexed income annuity, because it'll pay you an income for the rest of your life. So it's a lot of different. You need to check it out. Frank, is it for you? I don't know. I don't know what your risk tolerance is, what you feel about things, what your security is, and what you've got and how you're obviously you've got some concerns about investing in stock. That's why we need to talk about maybe an annuity and the right kind of annuity for you And that guarantee that you've got of passing the risk, you carry the risk of the stock if it goes down. When you put your money into an annuity, you pass the risk on that money off to the insurance company and their guarantees.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about having that blueprint and finding the right products and services for you, and being open-minded enough to go through that process and hear things and see and get educated and learn is really what Tom and his team are all about. So get started today, whether it's coming out to one of the events we mentioned earlier on the website. Go to 𝗲𝗏𝑆wealthmanagement.com. Click on the seminars tab. Again, 𝗲𝗏𝑆wealthmanagement.com. Click on that seminars tab, or just call 855-526-1600 to get started today with a consultation, conversation, and a written retirement blueprint. 855-526-1600. For Tom Mosley, I'm your host, Mark Kelly, and we'll see you next time here on Ease into Retirement.
𝗪𝗠 Wealth Management is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through 𝗪𝗠 Wealth Management, Inc., MWM. 𝗪𝗠 Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership. License number 0K76766. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal, and any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. 𝗪𝗠 Wealth Management, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by 𝗪𝗠 Wealth Management. This radio show is a paid placement.